Okay, so we've got the basic setup done. We've got the Germans down here, gonna try going that way. We got the infantry gonna move through the woods to maintain some cover and breaking line of sight, and we'll see what happens. So the turn sequence in Panzer Grenadier is pretty simple. So step one is you roll initiative. We'll do blue for Germans, green for the US. Okay, so we have a tie. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take the numbers they roll on the dice and add the initiatives from the track. And in case of a tie, and like we have here, we're supposed to re-roll. So let's give that another shot again. Germans blue, Americans green. Okay, so now we've got a 9 to a 5. So what you're supposed to do in this case is you take the winning initiative, 6 plus 3 is 9, subtract the losing initiative, 2 plus 3 is 5, you get a difference of 4. Now you divide that difference by 2, and you're going to get a result of 2. So what that means is that the Germans can take 2 activations before the Americans get to go. So that's the way initiative works. What I like about it is you could see like how the initiative bonuses, as those go down, you would start triggering, multiple activations for the stronger side. It might be a little bit of a snowballing effect, I guess, but I think it's a pretty slick, easy way to handle differences in initiative. Or you could have, based on the scenario setup rules, you could have, a lot of times, say like an early Eastern Front scenario. I could see the Russians having like an initiative of 1 and the Germans having an initiative of 3 or something like that. Anyway, I just see it as a, a very simple way to sort of calculate initiative in a way that makes sense. Okay, so in this case, we're going to have the Germans move 2. So let's see what happens. And again, you can move, it's an impulse system, so you can sort of move a unit or a cluster of units. In this case, we have 3 tanks. They're all activated by individual leaders, so I think they would have to move one at a time. These guys could move as groups under the activation of the officers. So like this captain could technically activate this lieutenant and have them move off. The lieutenant could not activate a similar rank. So I guess what I'll do is I'll start by moving some tanks. So what I'll do is, again, line of sight is going to be blocked by a double town. The other thing with line of sight is spotting. You can see it actually on the turn record. Right now it is day. So I'm going to assume that 8 a.m. counts as day, because it's definitely not dawn. I think sometimes special scenario rules will tell you when dawn is, like if it's a winter scenario, like in this case. But I think in this case, 8 a.m. Or maybe it's, yeah, I'm not seeing it in the special scenario special rules, but I'm just going to go with it being daytime. So you can see that day spotting range is 12 hexes. So if you have line of sight, if it wasn't being blocked, you could be spotting these guys moving across the open. The one thing you do have to keep in mind, though, we're just talking about blocking line of sight with a town, is that the terrain itself can, have impacts on the line of sight. Like if you're in a town, you're considered to be 20 meters higher in elevation. It extends your line of sight, your spotting range by 6 hexes. So during daylight, we would have a spotting range of 12 hexes. Being in a town on a lookout would give you an 18 hex daylight spotting range. But certain limiting terrain means that they can't see you from a distance. So being in a town or being in woods means that a unit can only see you when it's like, say, 3 hexes away. It can vary for certain terrain based on the terrain effects chart, but towns and woods, I think, just have the default standard 3 hexes. So for these guys to see the people in the town, they're going to have to get pretty close, and sort of vice versa. For these people to be spotted in the woods, you won't be able to see them from the town. One thing that changes that, of course, is if you open fire. Anyway, that's a lot of explaining, wasting a lot of time. So let's just start moving pieces and see what happens. Like I said, I played this before, but it's been a little while, and I'm just going in kind of cold because why not? What's the worst that can happen? So I'll start by moving, say, this group. They have a movement of 3. You can see right there on their piece. The movement cost for light woods, I think, is just 1 for infantry units, but let me double check. Yeah, light woods is 1. So I'm just going to do this. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So what you can then do is you can put a move marker on them. I kind of already know who's moved, but you know what? I'll grab them just so you can see what it's like. Okay, here you go. Now, just note, I have a lot of marker counters from older, like 3rd edition games, not the newest reprints. Let me see if I can find what the newer counters look like. Okay, so the newer counters, let me pull one out here for move fire. You're going to see they look basically the same. There are a couple things going on. I feel like the middle is not as bright. I feel like somehow the lettering doesn't sort of, for lack of a better word, doesn't pop off the counter as much. Last but not least, side nubs on the counters. So what I actually did was I sort of kept an old game around. I think I had like Africa Core, or it was one of the, maybe I have both of the North Africa old ones, Africa Core, I forget what they're called. And I specifically got those because I wanted the old school markers, because moved fired is not that bad, even though I prefer the new one. But when you get to things like, and I know this is all personal preference, Rec versus the older Rec. So you can see, like, I mean, the picture makes it pretty clear what it is, but for me, again, you know, maybe I have old man eyes, like the picture is not really what I'm looking at. I'm looking for the lettering, and I'm looking for something that's quick and easy to sort of instantly read what I'm looking at. And this one doesn't do that for me. Again, side nubs. Damn side nubs. So Rec is one in particular, one that really bothers me. I think that's demoralized. So if I were looking at it from the distance I stand when I'm filming, even with my glasses on, I can't read that. It's dark red against a dark black background. And again, 90% of the counter, math is not actually accurate. It's not 90%, but you know what I mean, just hyperbole for its own sake, is taken up by an image that doesn't actually matter in terms of gameplay. So now let me show you the old school demoralized. Again, I mean, maybe it's not as thematic, maybe it's not as pretty, but there is no mistaking what that counter says, even from a distance. So that's the thing. Like, I'm not looking to get like right in this game's face to be able to read counters, to have to pick it up. And I mean, again, after a while, you understand what it says, but it's just, here's the other side, disrupted, compared to disrupted. Now, this one for me is pretty easy to read because it's got that darker background with the yellow text. But again, I think the newer counters are really, in terms of usability, for me personally, much worse. So that's something to keep in mind, you know, if you're looking to get these games. For me personally, I really needed to hunt down, and honestly, you can hunt down the old ones cheap, pretty cheap. I might stay away from, I don't know how much truth there is to this. There was always some talk about how the module Beyond Normandy, the old Beyond Normandy, had counters that were a little thinner than other games. I don't know if that included the information counters or if that was just the units, but that is something to think in mind. Like I said, I got the Desert Rats and Africa Core. I think those are the two. And yeah, I just plundered those for pieces and, you know, threw the scenarios in a box somewhere because I'm sure they're fun. But for me, I like Elsenborn Ridge, and then I have a lot of Eastern Front. That's the stuff I was really looking for. If I want to play North Africa stuff, honestly, I'd probably play ATS, get a little bit more in the weeds, get a little more tank action going. Okay, anyway, so we've got one moved, so now the Germans have one activation left. Let's bring up another unit. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. So I'm going to stop using these moved fires. It won't be that hard to follow. But at least you can see how they are supposed to look. You know, and I'll show you something. They have like dug in. Again, all the old ones. Spotted, to me, very clear. Spotted I might end up using, I should say that. Smoke, all these are very clear compared to smoke. Again, the picture tells you what it is, but Gray on gray. Yeah, I don't get it. Anyway, I'll pull these off. Not that important, but it is something that impacted my gameplay enough the few times I play this to go back and hunt down the old counters. Okay, so we've had the Germans go twice. That means it's time for the Americans to go. Now, the Americans really would love to use some of that artillery, but of course they haven't spotted anyone yet because of terrain and line of sight blocking. So what I'm going to do is, let me see what the terrain effect cost is for moving infantry units through a town. I think it's 1, but let me just double check. Okay, it is 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate this group back here with its lieutenant. Now again, in order to, well, it's going to go 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to move. That might be stupid, but what I'm doing is I'm going to move them up, hopefully so that they can spot somebody trying to make a run for it. You know what? Maybe I'm going to pull them back just a little bit, just to give some protection. Maybe that's sort of using outside knowledge, knowing that there's tanks out there. But yeah, this will give a little bit of protection from anything coming from the northeast, while still hopefully allowing some spotting for a lot of the action. But you know what? That's how these games work. So they've moved. So now we go back to the Germans. The Germans are now going to be on their 3rd activation. Let's bring these guys up. 1, 2, 3. Now we go to the Americans. Now the Americans, you can pass. And if both sides pass, I think like in a lot of impulse games, the turn ends. So having said that, let's see if there's anything the Americans can do. Now they have some good, that's a great anti-infantry vehicle with a range of 7, 24 for the firepower. That's fantastic. It's going to get obliterated if it comes face to face with any actual German armor. So I'm not sure if the trick is to hold that back and hope. Eventually the Germans have to come, right? Again, maybe I'm metagaming this a little bit too much. So am I holding that back for the onslaught? Part of me feels like that's a good core defense, for having to take that town. So the Americans will pass. Okay, so we've had the Americans move up. The Germans have done 1, 2, then the Americans 3. So now we're on to, let's see, 1, 2, 3. So we're on to the Americans' next move. They pass. So the Americans have gone twice. The Germans have gone 3 times. And remember, with the fog of war rule, as soon as both groups have gone 3 times, you start rolling dice. So let's see. Let's have the Germans move. He can move 7. So 1. I probably should have something for line of sight, shouldn't I? All right, line of sight is just your classic center to center. And I think you could spot from there to there. Let me see if I can do this a little neater. Probably the only thing worse than my tweezer work is my line of sight checks. Okay, so it'll probably cross that hex point. So let me double check what happens then. I feel like I need a better ruler. This one flops around too much. All right, let me try that one more time. Okay, so I think you can make the argument that it is, or it intersects that point right there. So let me see what happens with that. Okay, so according to rule 8.46, a line of sight that falls along a hex spine can pass through either of the 2 adjacent hexes, the spotting player's choice. So I'm going to have it so that, yeah, he's been spotted. So again, you could sort of mark that as spotted. So that was 1. So I probably could have checked that before anything happened. But so maybe what I would have done is, no, that's stupid. I went there, got spotted, and let's keep moving. Let me just double check something. Okay, so what I wanted to check was, the idea of like opportunity fire, anything like that. Again, I think with the 15-minute time scale, it's not that meticulous in its details, so there isn't things like opportunity fire as far as I could see. But again, I could be totally wrong. Okay, so this unit's spotted. It's moved 1, 2, 3, 4. And now it can't really be spotted anymore, so we'll just leave that there for now. So we're going to have it hole up there. All right, I think the Americans might pass. So let me see how many times the Germans have gone. At least 4. The Americans have gone 1. So the Americans just went their third. So I think now what I have to do is, after the third time, they get to roll dice. If it's above 16, the turn's over. Close. Okay, so we keep going. So now the Germans get to go. They're going to get to move another tank up. I'll do it a little differently so this one doesn't get spotted. So if I move there, it's going to get spotted down the hex spine, but we'll stop there. Now we roll. Okay, we keep going. The Americans are going to pass. Now the Germans will get to go again. 2, 3. We'll have them double up there. No, we won't, just in case. Can't keep going because we're going to go down the hex. So we'll go there. So that's the Germans. So let me roll one more time. Nope. Okay, the Americans pass and the Germans are done. So that's it. End of turn 1.